Hello and welcome to another storming edition of Hitting the Headlines with me, the headline maker, Kirk Cooper. And I am going to be joined on this week's show by one of the icons of Northern Irish wrestling, Rocky Starr. So he's going to be coming on in just a wee moment here. First of all, again, just like to say a big thank you to everyone that's been listening over the last few weeks, whether that's been on Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, and through Scottish Wrestling Network as well. We're building up a good wee following here, and I'm hoping to keep on providing good content, good podcast chat, and something a wee bit different for folk that are into their wrestling podcasts as well. So this week we're going to be looking at, quickly, we're going to have, instead of a full chat about all the week's headlines, there's going to be news in briefs. You know, briefs because wrestlers wrestle in their pants pretty much. So we're going to do that with Rocky, and then we're going to do a bit of a Q&A with him as well. I had put out the fact that Rocky was coming on the show this week on Twitter and on Instagram. Not expecting to get much in the way of questions, but you guys have come up trumps for me this week, so we'll be delving into that as well. So without further ado, we'll get the front man, Rocky Starr, coming in here. Rocky fella, how you doing?
How's it going, Kirk?
Not too bad at all, fella. Can you hear me all right there, yeah?
I can, yeah.
You have got some lighting set up there. By the way, you look picture perfect.
As always.
As always. No, I don't know if it's what you've done with your hair, but the lighting is absolutely superb for you there.
I made an effort for you.
Thanks, thank you. I've got a wee hand lamp thing to try and do something with me, but all it's doing is showing up my acne scars, so I'll keep that away for now. So I'm just saying, when we were coming on there, Rocky, this week we're going to have a look at a couple of the headlines, and instead of doing a big deep dive into them like we normally would, we're just going to ask you one question and one question only about each of those, and then we're going to go into a Q&A. And I was saying there as well before they joined us, it's the biggest response that I've had to any request that I've put out there like that. So no pressure, but there's fans wanting to hear what you've got to say.
That's good.
Good stuff. So without further ado, we'll get on with the news in briefs. And the first headline I've got for this week is NXT's got a good fin going. The Prince retains his crown in a torturous NXT main event at Vengeance Day as Bruiserweight Pete can't quite get the job done. Pete Dunne against the battle-hardened Balor. So I know you mentioned earlier on, Rocky, you hadn't got round to watching NXT Vengeance Day just yet. But have you seen any of the fallout from it at all?
No, I haven't actually. Well, I've heard great things about that match, so I will go back and watch it definitely.
It was top to bottom. It was one of the best shows that there's been this year. It was takeover standard, but there was some great stuff in there. The MSK versus Grizzled Young Vets was a great tag team match. Gargano and Kushida, you knew it was going to be a barnstormer there as well. And the main event, where basically Dunne and Balor just tortured each other for half an hour. It was fantastic stuff. The selling in it and everything was amazing. And again, if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you listen to other wrestling podcasts, so you'll probably no doubt have heard everything that went on in that as well. So we're not going to deep dive into it. But the question that I have for you, Rocky, based on this one is, despite having big names and exciting characters in NXT just now, like Finn Balor, Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, Karrion Kross, for you, is NXT still hitting the heights and still as good as it was when Balor was there the first time, along with like Sami Zayn, Nakamura, Kevin Owens, and of course the Four Horsewomen?
So I think the time period you're talking about, you know, back sort of 2014, 2015, it was more of a developmental show. So there was more emphasis on bringing people in that people didn't know and building them from scratch. Whereas today it's more that they bring these guys in that are already established elsewhere and they just let them go ahead and do their thing. I think for me as a viewer, it was more enjoyable to watch somebody, you know, rise through the ranks and then eventually reach the top, rather than, you know, you come in, you get a title shot, as sort of a lot of these guys have done lately. So I think I did prefer it back then, just because there was more of a story, generally speaking. You know, there is some good character work these days, and there are some good stories, but I think that but back then it was more consistent. So that's what I enjoyed watching.
Cool. Do you think as well that because there are so many other guys coming into developmental and the fact that they're pushing it as more of an equal brand, a brand on equal footing with on SmackDown. That a lot of guys are kind of getting that rocket strapped to them too early, and then you get everybody else just kind of floundering around.
It's hard to say. I mean, I think they're not going to put those guys in those top positions if they don't think they're ready for them. But in terms of the people who are actually there for for developmental, I think they could maybe be forgotten about a wee bit. You see, a lot of guys have been sort of stuck there for a good few years and haven't really gotten much traction. So I think maybe it's worse off for those kind of guys.
Yep. And is there anyone from the current NXT roster that you think is destined to make it up to the Raw and SmackDown at the moment, or do you think those guys are going to be lifers in NXT as well?
Karrion Kross, definitely. He'd be up before long. He's got the main roster look, as they say. He's a big guy, has the big entrance and all that stuff. So I can see that translating to a big stage very well.
Cool, good stuff. Well, I know that was more than one question that we asked you on that, but we'll move on to the second headline here, which is Kenny Moxley and the exploding barbed wire death match. Now, I know that you had a bit of a moan about my previous headline, but that's pretty much saying exactly what it is. The Cleaner and the Lunatic have signed on for the hellacious slice of hardcore heaven at the Evolution. And my question to you on that is a death match a step too far for a company that's competing to be the top dog in televised wrestling?
I don't know. We'll see, I guess. What was an exploding barbed wire death match? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. I've never heard of or seen. I'm assuming CZW have done stuff like this in the past. It's not my bag when it comes to wrestling. But yeah, exploding barbed wire death match. It's telling you exactly what it is. But for someone that's maybe a casual or passing viewer of AEW, do you think that is the right move, the right direction they should be taking the top championship feud into?
I'm not so sure. I personally have never been the biggest fan of that kind of stuff. I've seen clips from like FMW in the 90s. You'd Mick Foley and Terry Funk doing all those kinds of matches, and it was just they were setting the bar so high every time. And I think that with this one, if somebody comes in as a new viewer and they see this, right, it's a title match and it's an exploding barbed wire death match, then when the next title feud comes along and it's just a bog standard singles match, how's that going to look? By comparison, is there any going back from setting the bar so high? So I don't know. Time will tell. I'm certainly going to watch it, and we'll see what happens.
Well, you've been involved in a few sort of hardcore themed matches in your time as well. You had your infamous run against Chris Renfrew, where you battled each other for pillar to post. You said your Courage match as well, where you were setting about each other with Guitar Hero stuff, and I'd assume that kind of stuff hurts, fairly well. But could you ever picture yourself or think how bad that's going to feel for Moxley and Omega in an exploding barbed wire death match?
I wouldn't fancy it personally. I've been hit with a Guitar Hero controller, and that was sore enough for me. Don't know about exploding barbed wire. That sounds a step too far.
It sounds like it could be something if the Wrestling Live, if they would want to take their shows to the next level, because Nick loves a gimmick, and Nick Campbell loves a gimmick, so I could see him maybe delving into that side of things once we get shows back there as well. Now,
it sounds like you're volunteering there, Nick. If you're listening,
I'm putting him forward for that. I will be working for them. I'll not be doing any of those matches, but certainly I just want to get any kind of matches back, to be honest. It's getting to that stage. Headline number 3 in this news and brief section for us this week is enclosed encounters of the chamber kind. The Elimination Chamber beckons this weekend as Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre aim to keep their titles close and their enemies closer coming into that one. So my question for you, straightforward, bog standard question on this. Who's winning both of those chamber matches? And at the end of the night, are Drew and Roman going to be standing tall with their titles?
I do think Drew and Roman will still have the titles going into Mania. It seems like Mania is so close, and I can't see them changing things up between now and then. But you never know. Stranger things have happened. Isn't it the SmackDown one? The winner of the Chamber gets a title match against Roman.
Yep, straight after it. Yeah.
That's a bit of a red flag. It could throw a spanner in the works there.
I've got a bit of an out there prediction for that one. I think Daniel Bryan is going to win the chamber match. Roman's going to come out, try and destroy Daniel Bryan, but Owens is going to cost Reigns the title. Bryan wins it, and the Miz cashes in. Miz cashes in and Daniel Bryan straight away, and then we've got a proper big title feud that's been brewing for years and years with Daniel Bryan and the Miz. Now, I don't necessarily think that would be a box office or a WrestleMania headline-worthy main event, but the story's been building and building and building for years on that. The two of them absolutely despising each other, but they've never fought, as far as I can remember, they've never had a good feud over one of the top titles. So that would be something that I could see happening.
That'd be interesting.
And as for McIntyre, I don't know, like, I'm enjoying his run as champion. Obviously, you know, Scottish, need to keep it real, need to keep him up there. But it's just how much further can they go with him as champion in the way that they're going? I mean, how do you've obviously worked a show or two with in the past. You know, how have you looked at it from being a peer of his to where he is now? How have you enjoyed his time as champion?
Oh, it's great to see. You know, I think that what we all really felt for him last year at Mania, you know, it was his big crowning moment, and it was in front of absolutely no one. So I hope that this time he gets to go into Mania as champ, even in a stadium, you know, with a limited crowd or whatever it may be, you know, just to have that kind of a Mania-like, a proper Mania-like entrance, you know, and the match and the whole thing. So, yeah, it's been really, really cool. And
with Sheamus probably, you know, being the man that he's going to face, I would assume, you know, because the way they've been building Sheamus on that. Do you like that idea of having two non-Americans and non-Canadians being the guys to take WWE forward into WrestleMania and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think of it so much as them being non-Americans or whatever, but I think that just the story that they have, you know, everybody knows that they came up together, and you know, it's just it writes itself basically. You know, so to have such a real story that's been going on for so long, I think it's a perfect main event.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for coming through those news and briefs with me there, Rocky. And before we get on to the Q&A, it's time for this week's sponsor. Now, this is quite an apt sponsor we've got this week. They've asked me to read it out in this certain way. Podcasts about wrestling are brilliant, no matter what way you swing it. But what's better than listening to legends of the ring, grappling personalities, and wrestling dads using considerable amounts of their time, energy, and expletives to criticise modern-day wrestling? I'll tell you what's better. Absolute marks and nobodies tearing into other wrestling podcasts on their own shoddily recorded and poorly edited shows. And that's exactly what you'll get on the Join Jabroni podcast network. There's wannabe Jim Cornettes pulling Jim Cornettes on Jim Cornette. There's a guy that will convince you that 83 weeks could have been done in 27 days. And on JR, Grilling JR, there is a massive virgin called Johnny Rodriguez complaining every week about Jim Ross moaning about Attitude Era mid-carders live from his mum's ensuite bathroom. It's like Inception, but with wrestling podcasts and fuck all budget. Listen today on the Join Jabroni podcast network, where opinions are shite morning, noon and night. So that was this week's sponsor. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty here, Rocky. We're going to get into what everyone's listening for, and that is the Q&A that we're going to do with you. As I said at the start of the show, we had a really good response to this, which is why we've kind of run through everything else so quickly. We've had questions coming in from fans of Northern Irish wrestling, fellow wrestlers, guys that you're training as well. So there's a whole host of things to go through. So the first question that I'm actually going to pose to you here comes in from a man you know very well, Mr. John Prento. Now, his question is based on something that's not necessarily Northern Irish wrestling related, but his question is, what was the story behind what happened backstage at 5 Star Wrestling when it came to Belfast?
That was a good day. Yeah, I've never actually spoken about this. So this was 2018, I think, March 2018. It was back when the weather was really bad. It was the Beast from the East, I think they called it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 Star had actually got in touch with PW a week before the show, asking if anybody could be available for ring crew. So myself and a few others jumped at the chance. So we went down for ring crew for that day, and so somehow I made it. I mean, we were going through the snow and all. It was public transport was all over the show, so we made it anyway. And it was just really cool experience, you know, just to see the scale of that kind of an event, compared to what we're used to,
Yeah.
in gyms and hotel function rooms and stuff like that. This was a proper arena show with the big screens and the lights and all, so it was really, really cool to be a part of that and just to see the difference.
Was there more people backstage at it than were actually at the show? Because that was something that kind of like affected Five Star everywhere they went. They were booking out arenas. They pretty much, as a fan of the Elite League ice hockey, they pretty much booked out every arena that the Elite League ice hockey was playing in when they were touring in the UK, but they were getting about a tenth of what they could actually hold.
I think it might be a bit of an exaggeration to say there were more people backstage, but yeah, it wasn't the biggest crowd I've seen in the Odyssey. It was only a half hall setup, so half it curtained off anyway. And as I mentioned, the weather didn't help.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, a lot of people that had tickets couldn't make it anyway. But yeah, so a good few of the wrestlers that were booked couldn't make it. I think it was Rey Mysterio was the headline, and he couldn't make it, and he was meant to be wrestling. I think it was Adam Maxted.
Mm-hmm.
In the main event, so I felt for Adam that day. I was chatting to him, and he obviously was meant to wrestle Rey Mysterio in the main event in Belfast, and it didn't happen. But I was actually very, very close to being on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you always say, rule number one: always bring your gear. So that's what I did. We were there for ring crew. As I said, it was a long day. Everything was set up, and I'd sort of gotten wind, that if you guys couldn't make it, so. Was chatting to a few people, said, I'm here, I've got this much experience, I've got my gear, I'm ready to go. So I was on the card at one point, and then a few guys made it that they didn't think were going to make it, so then unfortunately it didn't happen. But yeah, at one point I was backstage behind the curtain in my gear at the Odyssey, ready to go. So
who were you supposed to go up against?
Man, I can't remember. It was a tag team match. I was meant to be tagging with a guy, I think he's from Newcastle. We were actually, it was pretty funny. His name was Rocky Starr. So just a coincidence where we were both there, and so I think they were putting us on as a tag team. Yeah. I can't remember who we were going to be against, but the card got reshuffled at the last second. So
there was a really good video doing the rounds on Twitter earlier this week. I don't know if you saw it. It was like someone had called out Grado on it. And it was a clip from one of the 5 Star shows. I think they'd done it in Nottingham, where, again, Nottingham ice hockey arena, I think it holds 6,400 people turned up to it. But the bit in the match was Grado and Rey Mysterio. Grado and Colt Cabana came in to make a save on RVD, because there was like a big clusterfuck thing going on. But RVD had no idea who anybody was. So he just super kicked Grado straight in the face, even though he was out to help him. And like Grado had shared a couple of different videos of them doing backstage stuff, and RVD just had no idea who anybody was on it. And going by a lot of accounts of people that have done stuff with 5 Star as well, that seemed to be quite the thing, that nobody had a clue what was going on. But it would have been good if that had taken off. I was gonna talk about about wrestling being on television and stuff like that in the UK, but I think we'll bypass that and maybe do that in another episode. But yeah, it was good that you had a fairly positive 5 Star experience with a lot of people, didn't?
Yeah, well, I mean, I went there, put in a day's work, got paid. Can't say anything bad about that.
Good stuff. Now, the next question that we have for you is one of 3 that's been posed by someone who is gaining a bit of notoriety on Northern Irish Instagram, and that's whoever it is that's running the NI Pro Wrestling page. He or she, maybe she, I don't know. I did ask them if they would come on, but I wanted to keep their anonymity as such. But one of the questions that they posed for you is to do with the Northern Irish scene in general. It's like, what Northern Irish talent have been most influential to your own development as a wrestler?
I hate having to pick just one, but there have been a lot of guys that have been very, very, very helpful and influential on me. I would say if I had to pick one, and I hate putting them over, but I have to say JDP. Just because, so he, for anyone who doesn't know, he was the promoter of PW back when I first started, or one of the promoters. So I got my start through him. He was one of the guys who trained me early on. He put me on shows, gave me a lot of opportunities, and he'd always been, has always been approachable.
Mm-hmm.
If I ever have any ideas or ever want any feedback or advice, and he always gave me the freedom to just go out there and do my thing and just let me kind of try things and see what works and what doesn't. I think that's very important, especially early on. You need to sort of find yourself. And one thing I liked is when I did ask him for advice, you know, anybody that knows him, I'm sure you'll agree, there's no bullshit with him. You know,
Yeah.
if you've done something wrong, he's going to tell you. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He's not going to tell you what you want to hear. So I think you need that, definitely, you know, especially in wrestling. It's very important. You need to hear things as they are and what you need to hear, basically. And still to this day, you know, with Titanic Wrestling, still very close with him. Always talking to him and stuff. So I mean, he's been sort of the constant, you know, since day one for me. So I'd say JDP.
Ah, good stuff. You know, as what's the most polite way of putting it? As brutish as he can sometimes come across, and as mardy as he can sometimes come across as well in a training session or on a show day, he does, like, the impact that he's had on Northern Irish wrestling is, you know, it's astounding. It's basically what's kept us going. You know, when PW went down the shitter in Titanic, rose from the ashes of it. You know, it's JDP that's been the one that's been, you know, pushing that on, and he's enlisted yourself and with a Valentine and Tucker to, you know, keep training this next generation that I'm fortunate enough to be a part of. So, you know, definitely, I mean, he's not going to listen to this anyway, never does. So we can say what we want about him, but in this occasion we're saying pretty good things about him as well. Now, one of the guys that I mentioned there, with a Valentine, he chimed in with a question, or more of a statement really, which was Rocky versus Luth versus Tucker, Culture Night 2021, F something something K, S something something T up. So I'm assuming that means Fink sent up, and he's paying homage to Howard Finkel, who died around about this time last year. So rest in peace, Fink. I'm assuming that's what it means. But yeah, Culture Night it's been a big thing for Northern Irish wrestling over the last couple of years. Obviously, it couldn't happen last year, and it's, you know, it's always a fun night. What have your experiences of Culture Night been like, and you know, what does it mean to you as part of the wrestling community here?
I have to say, Culture Night is hands down my favourite night to wrestle. Favourite venue, favourite experience, favourite crowd. It's just, there's something about it. I can't describe it. You know, if you've been down at it yourself, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just, it feels like, you know, that sort of big show feel. You know, it's really, really cool. I've actually had matches with Luther, Valentine, and Tucker at Culture Night, 2 separate singles matches, and it's been just some of the most fun that I've ever had wrestling. I think it's really good because it's not a wrestling crowd. You know, it's just people are down there for Culture Night. So it's a real test of you, because sometimes we can get too comfortable if you're in front of your own crowd and people that know you. You know, it's not that difficult, or not as difficult, to either get them on your side or get them against you. You know, but when you're coming out complete clean slate, nobody knows who anybody is. You got to start from square one, and I think that's a real test of what you can do. So it's for that reason, you know, for the size of the crowd, you know, it's outside in the dark, floodlights and stuff. You know, it's just electric atmosphere. Love it.
I was supposed to make my PWU debut at Culture Night, but unfortunately I stupidly booked a holiday the weekend that it was happening. So as you guys were battling out in St Anne's Square, I was flying over in an EasyJet coming back from Scotland, and missed out on it. But no doubt I would have just get toughed out in the Battle Royal anyway. I think that's kind of what the plan was for that. So yeah, and obviously, you know, as Luther's laying down the gauntlet there, do you fancy yourself against him and Tucker in a 3-way if it goes ahead this year?
Anytime, yeah. I'd say 2021 might be a bit too optimistic, but absolutely anytime. I'd wrestle those two guys any night of the week.
Good stuff. Now, a friend at NI Pro Wrestling, he's come back in with another question here, and he's asking, do you enjoy matches more against big name imports or guys who you've helped develop? So obviously, over your run in PWU and even in Titanic, you've gone up against guys that have come in from America, UK, that kind of thing. Who are the ones that stand out for you, and do you prefer going up against them as opposed to guys that you've trained or that you've come up with?
Well, I think when you talk about guys that you come up with and guys you're familiar with, kind of what I was alluding to earlier with the Drew and Sheamus thing, it's easier to tell a story with guys like that, because the fans are used to seeing you together, and they know the history of you guys, in the past. So I think it's easier to get them invested from a story standpoint, because it's not just somebody flying in for a one-off match. Perfect example of that, actually. I'm not sure if you were around back in 2015.
No.
PW.
No.
So me and Dude Roxville had a match. So what we started as a tag team, the Wild Stallions. We split up, and then we had a her versus her match.
Yes, I've seen it. It's awesome.
So during the promotion for that match and stuff, I was saying, that the match was 20 years in the making, and it literally was, because the two of us actually grew up together, went to school together. We were wrestling out in my back garden as kids, and it literally was 20 years later that we were wrestling and sold out Europa Hotel, her versus her match. So we had all of our friends, all of our family who knew that whole story, and they all came down. And even the PW fans, they saw us come in as a tag team together, and we progressed and eventually clashed in that her versus her match. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're talking about that compared to a more established name, obviously the big names come in, and just because they're big names, because they have the following, you're automatically getting eyes on them and whatever they're doing. So if you're in with them, then you've got eyes on you. So that's obviously very, very, very beneficial. And also, I think that seeing sort of big names come in to a local promotion like PW or Titanic or anywhere else, I think it gives us more legitimacy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? We had a guy, with loads of guys come in, it happens all the time. We had Kevin Nash come in a couple of years ago to PW, and I was to interrupt his promo and come out, talk a bit of shit to him, and then we had LJ and Nathan Martin were meant to come out and then set up a tag match. And the only thing that so I went up to Kevin Nash early in the day, shook his hand, introduced myself, and he said, so you're the one's going to talk shit to me tonight? And I went, yep. And he went, see you out there. And that was it. And I was like, oh shit, okay. So this is a test, So I mean, the fact that somebody like me who comes from a smaller promotion, if you can go out there with one of the biggest names ever, and just go out there and do it, it's a good feeling. It's great for my confidence, and I think it's great for the local scene as well. If one of their guys is mixing it up with an established name, I think it brings everybody up.
Yeah. And I was going to say, you on that note as well, going in the ring with someone that's more established, someone that's been around the block, knows what they're doing, I'd assume that would, boost your confidence as well, because you know exactly what you're going to get in a match. But when you wrestled James Storm, I know there was a bit of a miscommunication in that match that you maybe wouldn't have expected to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, it happens to all of us. So a bit of a hiccup. We got back on track. It was fine. I don't think that would have been any different if I'd been in with anybody else. Sometimes your mind goes blank and it happens. So, but it was still cool. I think that the only way you really get better is to be in there with people that are more experienced than you and better than you. So, I think from that perspective, but being in with someone like that, even when something does go wrong, they steer you back on track. It's only better for you, and you come out of it better off.
I suppose it's one of the things that you kind of look forward to as an up and coming wrestler as well. You want to be in that position where when the imports come in, the promotion's got that trust in you to go out there and do your thing with them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there was a good period of time where PW Tucker was the go-to guy for the imports, and rightly so. He was a level above, I would say, the rest of us. So getting to sort of mix that up, and for you to be the guy that gets that shot, it's a good feeling. It shows that they have faith in you.
Cool. And with that experience that you've gleaned, you've been put in as a trainer role, as a coach in Titanic, which has led to one of your trainees, Catchman Mills, Alan Mills, who I know you've got a bit of a rowing fetish with.
Don't say that.
Well, he's keep him in shape during lockdown. He came on through Instagram and he asked us, out of the current trainees in Titanic Wrestling that you've been working with, who do you think has the potential to become the top heel or the top face, or just in general the top guy within the company from the guys that you're training?
That's a tough question, you know. I think the fact that he was asking us, he expected me to put him in that list.
He may well be. He may well be. You know, he's certainly come along. I mean, I think I've got about a year's experience on him. You know, he came into Titanic at the start, which was about a year after I started, and I've seen a big difference. I think my last training session, it was myself and him going at it, and you know, he's put in a lot of work. I know he's gone vegan, you know, right way or wrong way, whatever your life choice is in that regard. But yeah, he's someone that's come along and doing well. Is that the kind of I suppose the kind of progression you like to see? You know, guys maybe come in, you know, that maybe a wee bit out of shape, maybe not necessarily wrestler looking, but once they get into the swing of things and they come to the training and you put them through a deck of cards and stuff like that. Do you like to see that progression within the guys that are training, that are committed to the bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it shows, you know, it shows a lot of their character, you know, if they're willing to come in, and if they're not up to a certain standard, be it, you know, look wise or fitness wise, cardio wise, you know, and they just put in the effort and just consistently put in the effort. It's great to see, you know. It's because you see them sort of progress, come out of their shell as well, you know. So I think all you can ask is that somebody comes down and just makes the effort consistently and keeps showing up, keeps asking for feedback, and just keeps putting the work in.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, you know, over the last year, you've seen guys come in like Jordy Boy, for example, who, you know, he's one of the hardest trainers we've got. You've wrestled a couple of matches with him, I think, as well. You know, he'd put up a thing on his own YouTube channel earlier, like a highlight reel as such, and a lot of it was him battering you. And you know, is he one of the guys that you think, you know, once everything's back up and running, you know, a company, whether that's Titanic or any of the other Northern Irish companies, he's a guy that they could, you know, hang their coat upon as such?
I think so, yeah. I mean, you know, a guy like Jordy, you know, I feel for guys like that, guys that were sort of at the cusp of, you know, going out there and making it, because obviously it's all stopped, and it's been stopped for almost a year. And, you know, to have guys like that are just, they're ready to go, and just it gets pulled out from under them, you know, it's frustrating for me to watch. So I can only imagine how frustrating it is for someone like that who's been putting the work in, as I said, you know, consistently for so long. So hopefully it's not too long before guys like that get what they've earned. Yeah,
I mean, I know that, like, whenever I'm coming along to training sessions and it's yourself that's taking it, you know, I do what I can to kind of push myself through. You know, the deck of cards, as we mentioned, it's something that we all know you for. We all kind of dread it when we know it's yourself that's taking training on there. But when you see guys like myself that are maybe not as, you know, in shape as somebody like Jordy or that, what are your kind of what are your hopes for guys like us? You know, obviously, you know, without wanting to, you know, bring other people into it, but guys like myself, maybe Big Jack Ridder, who maybe don't necessarily have that look, but that wee bit older, you know, where do you see us going within wrestling in Northern Ireland?
It's not for me to answer, you know. I mean, there's so many variables. So I mean, all that I would want for anybody is that they get what they want out of wrestling, you know, and they enjoy it. So I mean, it's really for you and for Jack and for whoever else, you know, set your own targets and work towards them. You know, it's not up to me to say, you know, this is where you need to be in 3 years or whatever. So I mean, I can't really answer that. It's a question for you guys.
Well, again, I'll come from a more personal kind of thing. Obviously, you know, I'm a wee bit older coming into this, and my bump card is maybe a lot shorter than a lot of the other guys. From your experience of, you know, the way I commit myself at training, the way that I go through, you know, training matches, anything you've seen of me, what's your honest assessment of me as somebody that could do something in the Northern Irish wrestling scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sky's the limit, honestly. You know, as I said, or as you've said, you know, you're putting the work in. you're getting yourself out there. You've got a brand for yourself. You've got the podcast, so you've got that following. You've got that on social media and stuff. So that's half the battle. It's getting people to know who you are and know you exist. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, the sky's the limit. Just keep going for it.
And is there anyone in Titanic, for example, that you think, other than, I know you mentioned Geordie Boy earlier on and we spoke about him, but is there anyone else you see that could maybe, make that jump from, whether that's just from local shows to maybe somewhere like OTT, or, going across the water to Scotland, England, that kind of thing?
I mean, I think there are guys that have been around for a while that have never really sort of escaped out of Northern Ireland, I mean, like guys like me, for example, I mean, I've been putting the work in for 7-8 years, I mean, I wrestled once over in England, and I wouldn't want somebody like you, coming along and take opportunities away from me, because I've been putting the work in, so I'm first in line as far as I'm concerned. So if you want opportunities, you got to get behind me.
Well, I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, I know that you're long established in Northern Irish circles, and as you say, you've made it across the water maybe once there. Do you think at your stage in your career you should have been over there a wee bit more often?
This is kind of taking a turn. Kirk, are you just trying to piss me off or something? What is this?
No, I'm just asking. I mean, I know that I'm getting on in age, but I've just come into the wrestling industry really. But you've been in it for the good wee while now. You've kind of been a big fish in a small pond, a medium-sized fish in a small pond. Do you think that from being a PWU champion, from having high-profile matches, you should have got, you should have been a wee bit bigger than what you are?
You serious?
It's just an honest question. Just asking you to, as an appraisal of your wrestling career yourself. Are you where you envisage you would be at this moment in time?
You tell me. What do you think?
Well, from what I've seen of you, there's a lot of fight in you. There's a lot of fight in you. You've got the credentials, But what? I kind of, I'll turn it back on you. What is it that stopped you from, making that jump to the likes of OTT or getting over in Scotland, that kind of thing? What would be the?
What do you mean? You're acting like I'm sort of over the hill, and my time is
not
sort of coming.
I'm not saying you're over the hill, but with the experience that you've got and the experience that you've gained. And even with the experience, the Rocky Starr Experience, the gimmick is great. But why haven't other promotions from outside Northern Ireland picked up on that?
Ask them.
And speaking of your gimmick there as well, I know that it's kind of a cardinal rule in wrestling that when you're coming up with a name, you don't have Rock or Rocky in it, and you don't put Star in it. What was it that kind of made you go against the grain with that when you were coming up with your persona?
Are you taking the piss?
No, it's that was one of the first things that I was ever told. When you're coming up with a name, don't try and don't try and be too over for yourself. Don't be too much of a mark for yourself.
Did you just call me a mark for myself?
That's it's not what I was meaning. It's not what I was meaning. It's just
okay. Well, hold on. No, right. Let me speak. Right. So I'm not the one who's had about 2 matches that's sitting there wearing his own merch. All right. Has anybody ever bought one of those T-shirts?
One. I've sold one. I think.
Aye. Yeah.
I think I gave that away actually.
Aye. It's more like it. So don't sit there and imply that I'm a mark for myself. As you said yourself, you're only just coming into this, all right? And I'm at the top. Okay, so know your place. Next question.
Okay, where is it? Where is the next question? Okay. Who is the most famous wrestler in your phone book, and why won't Aoife Valkyrie return your calls anymore? I'll skip by that one. When you stood face to hips with Kevin Nash, what were you most fearful of? Cutting a promo on a legend like Big Sexy, or that you might lose an eye if his quad popped in your face?
What kind of stupid question is that?
It's somebody asked it.
Who asked it?
Just somebody. With Owen Richards using a gif of DDP to praise Kirk Cooper for getting into the business at an older age, which wrestler gif would represent you best? Hornswoggle, Dink the Clown, or that one where Jeff Jarrett smashes the wee fella Beetlejuice with his guitar?
Next.
That's me done.
That's you done. Seriously. So you bring me on here. You ask me a couple of questions about myself, which I'm happy to talk about, and then you just start insulting me with made-up questions that nobody has asked.
Well, they were there. They were there to be asked.
By who?
Just folk. Just folk.
Aye, I'm sure. I'll tell you what, Kirk, sitting there in your own t-shirt, it's been a complete waste of time.